Alrighty, I just wanted to introduce you to Angie Colee. We're doing a quick case study interview. Angie's been my client for, I don't know, 2 years or something. She is a marketing consultant, a kick-ass copywriter, a coach of freelance other copywriters, doing a lot of work with people over in Copy Chief over in that world. And yeah, she's been amazing and kicking all kinds of ass. And just wanted to share what she's been up to over the past 2 years and some of the accomplishments she's had. So thank you for coming and talking today, Angie.
Hell yeah, I'm excited to do it. Like, was there honestly even a time that we weren't working together? Because it feels like it at that point.
Yeah, just since
forever,
pretty much. Getting on a call every week. All right, cool. So yeah, if you can remember all the way back long ago, like what was going on in your life or business before we started working together?
I remember it surprisingly vividly. And you would probably laugh, but let's get a little full-on drama here because this was my actual reality. So I know you know this because I had just experienced an unexpected breakup a few months prior. I don't really know where I'm gonna go at this point, but I had also just quit my job to start my own business, and everything is up in the air and everything is horrible. I was literally standing out on the back porch at my mom's house in the freezing cold rain going Brian, you told me about this coaching thing. I think I might need it. Would this actually here's everything that is happening. I feel like I just kind of emotionally dumped all over you and was can you help me? And you were yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. And what specifically were your goals or things you wanted to work on, or what were you initially hoping to get out of it?
Yeah. Just kind of clarity on what I wanted to begin with and confidence to proceed and actually make steps. So I think that was just such a pivotal point in my life where I had, I went basically in 1 week from having this plan to start a business and move into a new house with a partner to having none of those things and none of the security that I anticipated, and a lot of fear and uncertainty about the next steps. And so I was just I have all of these kind of nebulous goals for how I want to build my coaching business and my eventual podcast and my thought leader empire. And right now I'm just really alone and scared, and I don't really even know what to do. So can you help? Does that answer the question?
It does. Yeah, nebulous goals. I like that. That is a very as some kind of thing in towards this direction, but I don't know exactly what it'll look like or how I'll get there or anything like that. Cool. And so what made you decide to work with, I know you've done business coaching programs, you've been behind the scenes and working for a lot of companies that teach you how to build businesses and all that kind of things. So you've had a lot of information, you've had a lot of coaching. What made you decide to work with me instead of either doing it on your own or getting other coaches?
I think it was a large part your personality because let's face it, you're amazing. And I don't care if that makes you uncomfortable. We're just going to say it. We're going to throw it out there. Awesome. I hope it makes you supremely comfortable because I think a lot of more people are about to find out how amazing you are. You've just always had this easy to talk to vibe, a lot of laughter, a lot of fun. And then as we worked together, I knew that had instinctively been a right choice too, because you've also got this great capacity to listen and reflect back. And then you know how to make me laugh when I'm getting a little bit too in my head, too in my feels. I think that's my favorite part of our coaching calls, when I express an anxiety that I've been looping on forever out loud and immediately hear how ridiculous it sounds now that it's been exposed to the light of day, and we just laugh at okay, well, is that actually true? It turns out it's not. Let's move on.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And that just that bit about you're awesome, hope that doesn't make me uncomfortable. It's well, because I got coaching myself and learned how to accept compliments.
Yes.
It doesn't. And yeah, that's one thing I love to help people work on as well. That's always a super fun thing. I think a lot of people in the copy world have that too, of it's really easy to remember criticism, and meanwhile the nice things, we'll just throw those in the corner.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, like just throw those out the window. Like let's just be extra special hard on ourselves. And yeah, I don't know how we expect ourselves to achieve great things when we're always being our own best, like favorite punching bag. But yeah, I think it was personality, approachability, like lightheartedness. And I know that I was seeking a lot of clarity, like I said, and fear. Like I knew that you had done a lot of studying on that whole process and the wheel of fear and stuff like that. And I knew that part of what I was dealing with the overwhelm and the fallout from a relationship, right? You got to grieve, you got to feel all the feelings. But I had this just like almost paralyzing fear of, okay, now I'm going out on my own. What if this was a big, huge mistake? I'm about to make an asshole of myself. Oops, sorry,
Yeah.
about to make a jerk of myself.
So yeah, so what kind of like what helped with that in terms of the coaching one? Like, yeah, you've like, I'm gonna get this big, huge step. I might make an ass out of myself. Like, how'd it go? And what helped with that?
Well, I mean, you kind of touched on it in the beginning when you introduced me, but you know, I had these kind of back of the mind hopes that I didn't really fully believe that I could achieve. And I had, I think, some serious like self-worth issues in putting those into play. And then every time I would challenge myself to step forward and work on one of those things, like the podcast launch, like working on the book, like pitching myself as, you know, getting into Entrepreneur and Forbes and all these other magazines that I wanted to get in as a thought leader, that I would shut down and think about all the reasons that I am not worth this, that this is an impossible dream. If I didn't find a reason to beat up on myself, I would find a way to overwhelm myself with all of the steps that it was going to take to achieve this thing, and then just basically shut down and not do anything for fear. It was an awful place to be in. I will be pretty honest.
Yeah. Oh, just hearing that just sounds like heavy and a lot and getting beat up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and then, so what were some of the things that helped with that overwhelm and with that kind of like paralyzing yourself almost?
I think that one of the biggest takeaways I have from our time of working together is just how often the stories that we're telling ourselves aren't necessarily true, but they just make a lot of sense because it's in between our own ears. And we're just having somebody to talk to about that fear, you know, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but a safe space to share that non-judgmental space and be able to say that thing that I fear the most out loud and instantly hear like, wow, that's not true. Or sometimes I say it out loud and you kind of like, I can hear the smile in your voice, even though we're talking on the phone. You're like, okay, well, here's one question that could clarify that. Does that sound true? And then we're both kind of like, yeah. Like one instance was I was scared of not being a good podcast host and not being able to get people on the show. And you were like, well, do you have just like no friends and nobody that you could call to ask? And I was like, well, I mean, no, I have lots of friends. And you're like, so is it likely that you're not going to be able to get any guests on this show? And I was like, well, when you put it that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, yeah, the fears and kind of thoughts and stories we tell ourselves, and like we just take them at like face value and like this is just how it is. But when you like stop and you start to like really like focus in on parts of it, you're just like, oh, there's no teeth on this monster. There's actually nothing here.
Oh yeah. Well, and I love the tools. I might even be getting ahead of the questions that you plan to ask me too, but like I think two of the tools that I found the most valuable were acknowledgements and the 4 A's. You got to coach with Brian to learn what those are, but
Brian or Rhonda Britton.
Yeah. What those really helped me do was learn how to process those intense feelings and fears as they were happening versus letting them get out of control. And it's wild. Right before we started talking, right before we started recording, I was telling you about like this horrible planes, trains, and automobiles experience that I've been having with my travels lately, because I'm a full-time digital nomad. And it was just not a great experience. And I had myself a good cry when everything went to hell last week. And then I took a nap and I like let the feelings wash over me. And I used the tools that you taught me and came up with the solution. And have just been laughing ever since. Whereas like in the past, that would have been a situation where it didn't go to plan. I am stressed out. We're just going to initiate shutdown right now because clearly I am a failure.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Oh, I love hearing that.
Now it just gets to be another story that gets featured in the book someday.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and that's awesome. Like, great job on you for using the tools and yeah, then seeing those results. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about, like, one of the first things that we worked on was the podcast. Can you talk a little bit more about just like, how things were before and then like where that is now?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's that interesting thing, and I don't think I'm alone in this feeling where like you have a dream, and as long as it's a dream, you can't actually fail at it. But at some point after you've been talking about it for a while, people start to ask you, so what about that thing that you were working on? And now it's a real thing that you have to do or back out of. And so there's a little bit of ego attachment there, right? I could be a failure just for quitting on the thing that I said I would do because I was scared. And then there's the possibility that I do this thing, even though it scares me, and fail, even despite my best efforts. So like there was a whole lot of just head trash that we had to unpack just in starting that. And, I talked about starting this podcast for, I think like 7 or 8 months. We started working together and I think like January of, I don't even know, like a couple years ago. 2021, because that was a couple months before I launched the podcast. And I had been talking about it since July of 2020. That was when I took the podcast workshop and I started like practicing my initial episodes and putting together the concept. And I talked about it for 6 or 7 months. And one of our mutual friends wrote to me one day and was like, yo, when's the podcast launching? I want to be able to promote this. And I was like, crap, it's real. Now I got to figure it out and how to take it out of my head and turn it into a sequence of steps and then execute those steps. And like, this is all overwhelming and I'm shutting down. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
yeah, it does for the first half. Yeah, so that's how it started. And then where are you at now with the podcast?
Oh my gosh. So I just recorded, I think like episode 87. So
Woo!
yes. Oh my gosh. And it has been, I think, one of the best growth experiences of my life, because the fears kind of evolved with every step that I took. First, it was like, oh my gosh, this thing is real. I have to put it together. So many steps just to launch the thing. Then I was fixated on this number that I'd heard around the industry of like, you got to get 10 episodes done because most podcasts fail. They get to like episode 7, run out of steam, and they never. So I was like fixated on, I got to get 10 episodes in the can and then we're going to launch this thing. And then when I started to get toward 10, I was like, well, there's no way that I'm going to have 20 people on. Like, this is going to, and then other fears started to evolve the further, like, obviously I got to 20 and beyond, and then word of mouth started to grow and people started to introduce me. So then that's no longer a fear. It's not a reality that I won't have guests. Okay, cool. What's the next thing that we can worry about? The next thing that we're going to worry about is somebody that stands me up potentially, or like has to reschedule. And I am left in the lurch 1 week in the production of the podcast. So I accidentally set up a system where I recorded enough episodes for the entire year of 2021 in just, I think it was 4 months. I started recording in February of last year, and I officially shut down recording and production on June 30th, and was like, that's it. I'm full through the end of the year. People that are reaching out now to be on the show, I have to tell them I can't air you until January, and they're going, no, thanks. I don't want to wait that long. I accidentally recorded enough content for an entire year. It was fun.
I vividly remember that and thoroughly enjoyed it. How quickly you went from like worried of not getting enough people to you've got a year of content just done.
I know. And it was like
turning people away. Yeah.
So many stages too. Like I got to shut down production and actually take a break from it so that I could come back to it every couple months with a renewed joy versus letting this be a slog. I remember us talking through this problem too, where there were, especially in the early days, mornings where I know this is recording day and I'm going to record a couple episodes today, and maybe I could just be sick and cancel all of these calls and we don't have to do them until later. And
come on, everyone just doesn't show up.
Yep, I know. Everybody stands me up today and I don't have to do any calls. Oh no. And then it turned out that when I kind of forced myself through that discomfort and showed up for the calls and was like, okay, all I have to do today is talk to people and have an interesting conversation with somebody about their business. They wound up just pumping me up full of energy. I was ending this day on like cloud 9. Oh my gosh. People need to listen to our episode too, because it's one of my favorite, but it was like so high energy. People were sharing. That was another fear that I had too, because I had positioned my show as like authentic talk, business owners talking about the real struggles and anxieties that they'd had in their life. And I was worried that nobody would want to share. Yeah. And in my first 10 episodes, I had people talking about facing a 6-figure lawsuit in the middle of COVID shutdowns, somebody losing 80% of their business in the matter of 2 weeks, somebody being anxious over, can I call myself an entrepreneur if I have a day job? Like, is that allowed? Can I do that? And people were openly sharing, and we were just having conversations, and I felt like we were really helping people that would be listening. And that just brought me a whole other level of joy I didn't anticipate.
Yeah. I mean, what's been some of the like reception of your podcast? Like, what do people like, any like things that are saying that stand out?
That's the funniest thing, is like when you get into the routine of it, right? It's easy to lose perspective. And I think just about every point where I'm like, is anybody really even listening? Like, is this worth it? That's the day that I'll get like 3 or 4 people writing in at once that go, oh my gosh, I listened to that episode you did like 2 weeks ago, and I needed that message today. Or like,
hell yeah.
Yeah, I always get the right message at the right time, just about the time I'm wondering, like, is anybody out there?
Nice. Yeah. And it was also cool, the point you made of like, you kept having these different goals and different layers. And like, yeah, with a big project like that, like, yeah, there's always new things you're doing, new fears that pop up, and being able to work through them all, like just as they came up. Like any one of those could have been a roadblock that then turned into like, well, I'll just stay stuck here for 8 months, but you just kept moving through it and got a year's worth of content done.
Well, I loved that you helped me realize that too, because I think those early couple months of recording too, when I was still figuring out how to even produce this thing, it's a lot of tiny little steps and a lot of work that has to happen to get each episode live, a lot of back and forth communication, editing, all kinds of stuff. And I was getting overwhelmed by all of that stuff and wondering whether it was worth it. And I remember you pointing out to me, but you've told me about how much energy these calls give you. So like, is there a way to focus on what you love about this and then just let the rest of it be something that you can break down into different steps and even figure out if you need to be handling this? And then it was like, oh my gosh, that's right. We live in a world where people specialize in doing these things, and I could outsource it to them. And I don't actually have to edit these episodes. I could just show up and have the conversation and send it to someone else for editing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been like these simple ideas that like you already know, but sometimes you just gotta like talk out your own stuff or get an outside opinion, and the things can get real obvious real quick. Cool. All right, so that was the podcast. So that got knocked off. Then
still ongoing. It's fantastic. We need to have an episode.
Yeah. Well, the initial friction got knocked off. Another major thing that you worked on was your book. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's still ongoing, but I know that's I started working on that in, I want to say 2018, and I just felt a lot of internal pressure, and it's purely pressure that I'm putting on myself, but like, this is my breakout work and it needs to be a bestseller and it's got to be like the most perfect thing I've ever written, but I've also never written a book and this is a lot of work. And like, did I repeat myself 20 times with the same story, but didn't actually tell another story that should have been in there for better context? And you know, I kind of got in over my head when I borrowed this idea that I thought was great about coming up with an outline and then doing it as a series of interviews. But then I did a series of interviews over like 9 months. So I had that exact problem where I'm like, did I tell the same story 20 times? I don't know. We've been recording for 9 months. Haven't actually looked at this whole thing in draft form from end to end. And when I finally did, I got so overwhelmed that I shut down and I wound up hiring an editor to help. And then was like scared to look at what the editor sent back for fear that she thinks I'm a crappy writer and is going to stomp all over my dreams. So I just experienced like a whole lot of resistance because of this internal pressure to make the first book the greatest thing that was ever created.
Yeah. And then what kind of helped with that, and how did things change?
We tapped into, like, we talked about like the wheel of fear and stuff, but the wheel of freedom really helped in all of this, because the more we talked about it, the more that I realized that I do my best work from a place of like joy and just pure fun. And that's been an undoing and a learning in and of itself, because of this deep kind of indoctrination that we get as a society, that you've got to like button down and buckle down and work really hard, and it's not always going to be fun, but you got to grit your teeth and bear it. But I've experienced so much forward progress when I just tap into the things that are fun, just like we talked about in the podcast. Oh my gosh, I'm having so much fun just having these conversations. Okay, what if I get rid of the things that aren't so fun? Oh my gosh, I don't feel like dealing with these edits, and I feel like I'm gonna judge my words unfairly and say that I'm a crappy writer and like stomp all over my dreams. And you were like, so have you ever had fun doing this? Okay, what were you doing when you were having fun? And then we broke it down into a series of steps of like, okay, I know I need to do this and I'm resisting. Could we just like turn all of this into a super fun game and get me enthused for it? Hell yeah, we can. That's what we can do. And that's how I got through like the third revision of my book. And I just actually spoke to my VA the other day about like, okay, so here are all of the 20,000 steps that have to happen between here and actual publication. Can you help me wrangle this so that I don't keep shutting down with all the steps? And she was like, yep, all right, cool, here's the schedule. Target date, March 2023.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
It'll be 5 years to get that baby to market, but damn it, it's happening. It's
Nice.
happening.
Oh, I love it. Okay, cool. And let's see. So another so the book came up next, and then another goal of yours was like getting featured in publications. Can you talk more about that? Like what was important about it, and what was your struggle with it initially?
Well, I knew that it's a lot easier to get business, to find new clientele when you've already established yourself as the expert, right? Just being out there, being visible, being an authority. And I had stumbled across this course that taught you how to get publicity. And so I knew kind of the mechanics of structuring a good pitch, how to get an editor's attention, how to reach out, all of this, because I'd taken the course. And then when I sat down to do the thing, I just like overwhelmed myself with all of the steps of finding the editor, coming up with the story idea. Oh my God, are they going to think this is lame? I'm a writer. I should know better than this. Like all of the fears just dogpiling on myself. Am I really worth being an entrepreneur? And then it was so funny because I think by then I had started to internalize a lot of the stuff that we were working on. But every once in a while I would read like frankly, a piece of crap on one of these big publishers' websites and go, I could do better than that. Oh my gosh. Like, and so I think we like issued it as a challenge 1 week after our call. Like, can you get out? I think it was simple, like one pitch this week. And the very first pitch that I sent out to Business Insider wound up getting accepted. And I was like, well, that was not like the 50,000 steps to hell that I imagined it was going to be. And maybe I made this a whole lot harder and scarier in my head than it actually is. Who knew?
Oh, 50,000 steps to hell. Cool. Yeah. So you got accepted as Business Insider. What else? How else did things end up in that realm so far?
I think I've got like 6 or 7 articles published to date. Even managed to leverage that expertise into like a discount on a service with somebody who was like, oh, I know how to write PR articles and I have a couple of editorial contacts. Would you be willing to exchange like some money off for some positive articles for you? And also thinking this is a win-win for me because I get that byline and people think that I say really smart things and find really smart places and like, woohoo, we all get better together. And he accepted that, which was really cool. So I got to sell that skill in other contexts. Nice. I love it.
Cool. Were there, I'm trying to remember, were there other places you were accepted besides Business Insider, or were most of the articles there?
I got into Thrive Global, Entrepreneur, Business Insider a few times, both on the money side and on the business side, right. And working on even more publications now.
Heck yeah. Nice.
Inc and Forbes, I'm coming for you.
All right, back to this ridiculously long list of things you've accomplished. Okay.
I'm just gonna put that on a loop and like use it to pump myself up.
So you said another thing that was going on when we first started working together was, yeah, so you're getting, you've been a copywriter for a long time, you're writing for other people, and you were getting more into your own business and kind of doing your own coaching and consulting and having your own offers. So yeah, so part of one of the things we worked on was you leaving this nice, secure, steady job to be able to go and do your own thing. Can you share a little bit more about that, like what it was like and like the struggles and what helped you through it?
Oh my gosh. Well, like it was a huge struggle because it was kind of changing a key piece of my identity. I'm like this behind the scenes writer who has a really good skill at making other people shine, like with her work, is usually behind the scenes and not really known herself for these things. So like I had to challenge, do I need to be a writer? I don't really feel like writing for anybody else anymore. Okay, if I'm stepping out and being a coach and podcast host and all of these things, what do I stand for? What am I really good at? And that was when all of the like ego and insecurity kicked in. Well, sure, I've done multiple millions of dollars in sales campaigns for other people, but I can't do it for me. That's just dumb. Like the fear kicked in a big way and was like, nobody's going to want to listen to what you have to say. You haven't built multiple $10 million companies and sold them at a huge exit. Nobody's going to have any kind of value to what you have to say. And I think we had a conversation once where I kind of articulated that fear in terms of the coaching arm of my business, was like, I can't help these people. I haven't built a $100 million Facebook IPO style company. And you just helped me break it down. We're like, well, have you coached people to start businesses before? And I was like, well, I mean, yeah. Okay. Like, did you actually help them get some results? Well, yeah. And here are some of those results. And then, well, when you put it that way, apparently I can coach people and help them out. Okay. I'm being kind of ridiculous. I don't know. It was kind of just a big emotional dog pile on myself where I was just literally just making up all of these reasons why the deck was stacked against me and I couldn't succeed, because I think part of me was really scared to succeed and like step out onto that stage. And what happens when the spotlight's on me and I can't hide behind another guru anymore? I don't know.
Yeah,
we're gonna find out.
So you had all those fears that like could have held you back. We worked through them, and so like kind of what happened as a result?
I have been working on pushing myself out of my comfort zone more and consciously sharing my thoughts with minimal self-deprecation. It's a journey. I still struggle with that. And in fact, recently have brought on a new business partner that we're working together. She's appointed herself my personal editor so that I can't say self-deprecating things about myself. Like, we're determined to kick this habit of minimizing my accomplishments to the curb.
Yeah, like that.
And I'm taking all the help I can get. You and everybody around me is gonna, we're gonna get onto that stage and we're gonna own it. Man, takes a village.
Okay, cool. And yeah, and what about, let's talk a bit about, so you moved away from some of the writing jobs and you were looking to get into more coaching and consulting. You ended up like getting some good contracts with that. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like what were some of the initial like struggles or fears and like how that all went?
Oh man, it was a struggle at first because I was trying to figure out all of these things at the same time. And that led to a lot of overwhelm, in addition to like the relationship grief and the logistics of moving from place to place. Like it was a bit much. And I remember, I think, talking to you about how one of the early consulting clients that I had lined up on a 5-figure monthly retainer, we're not getting along. And I am suddenly terrified that like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the sign that I am a failure and this was stupid and we need to like scrap this and go crawling back to the job and just all kinds of stuff. And, you know, obviously year and a half later, hindsight, benefit of all of that processing and things like that, I can see that was the wrong fit client. But it did bring up all of these fears of like, I just hit the road. I'm just starting this life by myself. I'm making these huge changes. And now this client is falling through. Oh my gosh, does this mean I made a huge mistake? And I think we fell back into that. I don't want to portray to people that I like made some miraculous linear. We've gone back and revisited the problems and the patterns that I'm repeating several times. But like every time I would get scared that I wasn't going to be able to make the bills and support myself, when I didn't react out of fear and came from a place of empowerment, things worked out. And every time I tried to force it and came at it from a place of fear and like, oh God, I got to drum up business, I am terrified that this is not going to work out, they were horrible clients. They weren't horrible people. It was just the whole fit was wrong. The working styles were off. I didn't have the joy for the projects. And if I wasn't coming from that place of desperation and fear, I would have seen that and owned that and passed on that project. Like, I don't know, it's made a world of difference. And now every once in a while when I'm like, I think this is why the travel story hit so hard from the beginning of the story, because the Airbnb that I checked into fell through right at the time I put in a huge down payment for my next live events. And so I had all this money tied up and had to wait for Airbnb to get back to me. And I took a couple days and was just like, you know what? The money it will be there. It is going to work out. Sitting here and stewing over this and worrying and freaking out and beating yourself up for being a failure is not going to help. So like, take a nap and go get in the hot tub and maybe cry it out and we'll be fine. This is going to work out.
Have a good cry, get it out. Yep. And then
don't react from a place of fear, because the fear is lying and hijacking everything and making it seem worse and leading you to not great decisions, you know?
Yeah. It's amazing. Like once you're able to really see that, like see how often it pops up and you do like, just like how you said, it's like, when I act from that way, I force things and things just don't quite work out. When I come from an empowered place, like even if things don't like, you're not on, you don't end up on Oprah or whatever it is like just yet. It's like things still just like work out in a way that's like fulfilling and satisfying, even if it's not necessarily how you like envision it.
Yeah. And it's helping to undo a lot of old stories that I had around how hard business had to be, like how hard it's a grind and I'm going to have to work to build this thing. The fact is that it can be easy, especially if you have a large, extensive network that you've built some pretty solid relationships with. And like when I wasn't reacting from that place of fear and like, oh my God, money, I'm not going to be able to survive. I'm going to crawl back to my mom's house with my tail between my legs and be a gigantic failure. When I would just sit there like, this is what I'm working on. I'm bringing it out with joy to the world. I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to stay connected to my group. That's one thing that travel has been really cool about too, because I realized that I've got a huge network and every place that I've stopped, I've been able to hang out with people, which just furthers my reputation in the industry and all of this good stuff. And then I would have conversations about, here's what I'm working on. Here's what I'm excited about. And somebody goes, oh, you need to meet this person. Oh, you need to meet that person. And coming at it from that place of joy, like we talked about earlier, learning to tap into the joy versus being run by the fear. The joy just brought people to me that were like, I don't know what we're going to work on, but I like you and we're going to find a way to work together.
Yeah. And
it's actually been a hell of a lot easier than I used to. Like I used to force myself to work 10 times harder than I now work. For what? Because I was scared and this is how you're supposed to do it. So let's do it this way.
And and this is also reminding me of other things like we've kind of talked about and worked on is like the idea of like needing to be like a businessy and professional and come off a certain way. And we've been kind of playing with like having more fun with your business and doing things the Angie way versus whatever some fucking guru says is the one and only way of pure enlightenment or whatever. So yeah, can you talk, like, you want to share a little bit about like some of that and how that's gone?
Absolutely. I actually really loved working with you for that reason, because I started to see the strength that I have in just leaning into my own natural personality, as weird as other people might find it. Okay, like if you find it weird and you don't understand the method to my madness, well, then maybe it's just not for you. But, you know, I was telling the story on a podcast episode I recorded right before I started talking to you about how the people that I work with understand that joy and freedom is how I produce my best work. And I literally have had people where they understand that I just pieced out to go on a hot air balloon ride at the crack of dawn in freezing cold weather in Albuquerque, and then like stopped for brunch with some people I met on the hot air balloon that are lovely that I want to stay in touch with. And then on the drive back to my Airbnb, had this idea for a new email sequencer, a new product. And I pitched it to them when I got back, and we implemented the thing by the end of the week. And now that's hundreds of thousands of extra dollars. Do they care that I got that idea in a hot air balloon? No, they do not. They tell me to send them pictures. They ask me, hey, if I want to go on a hot air balloon, where should I go? And I send them a recommendation. And like, I never would have thought that that was possible, because I've just had so many well-meaning people over the years tell me that everything about the way I operate is wrong. You got to be professional. You can't show any cracks. You can't let people know
Have
that
to wake up by 5 a.m. and get things done. Yeah.
Hyper productive. Got to hit all of your rocks, and then you got to do the pebbles, and then you got to do the sand, and then you got to do the water. Fill in every available space. There will be no air in here. Suffocate. Be buttoned up. Be more professional. Don't show your tattoos. Don't say the word fuck. Oh my God, you're so unprofessional. And then when I just leaned into that and let that be part of the joy and undoing the fear, that's just attracted so many people to me that don't care that I swear, and they don't care that I play hooky to go to Harry Potter worlds, and they know that they're going to get great value out of working with, and they might even be inspired themselves to take time off, heaven forbid. So like, it's being okay with who I am has actually led me to a reality that I frankly had no idea existed.
Yeah.
Old corporate Angie would be like, what is this the Matrix? What's going on? I don't understand.
Plus, now you can package a course of the hot air balloon secret to online to email marketing campaigns that make thousands of dollars.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Do all your thinking in hot air balloons.
Shoot, I just had an idea. Oh yeah. So another, again, as you're like moving into the coaching consulting, I know like one thing that a lot of there's copywriters that do coaching, and just I think a lot of people in general that struggle into that transition, is how to like taking on the work without just doing all the work yourself. And I know you had a client that came to you, you ended up working together for 3 months, and that was some of the initial fear of like, you know, how do you make sure you get off the phone and you're off the phone and you're not then implementing everything and realizing all of a sudden your effective hourly rate is nothing because you're doing all this work for free and that you didn't agree to initially. So yeah, can you share a little bit about that and how that turned out?
That was such a learning experience going through that, because that was again another one of those clients that kind of found me, and they asked me to consult with them because they thought what I was doing was super smart. And I was like, we ran into a lot of fears where I'm like, oh my gosh, they want a consulting and like, I want to position myself as this high-end consultant. And there's a whole lot of fears about whether or not I can do this and deliver value. And, you know, we positioned it as a trial and like this many calls and this much support, and said, okay, let's try it out. And then I got a little bit more data week by week that you and I could then talk about. Here's what happened, and here's how I'm reacting to it. And it just really helped to figure out that I could just take this one step at a time. We can figure out what the deal looks like and then jump in. We can take it 1 week at a time and see what we're learning on this thing. And I think one of the biggest things that I was really worried about was, am I providing enough value just by doing calls and providing feedback? Like, I'm charging a lot of money to these people to just show up once or twice a week on a call and provide some feedback. And old, you know, indoctrinated corporate structure Angie was like, but that's not enough hours. You've got to do more things and show them that you're valuable. And so every time I ran into that, you know, basically story that I was telling myself that I have to jump in there and do more things, we would talk about value and reframe how the value that I'm bringing to this company is not in doing all of the things. It's in being outside perspective. And I can't be the outside perspective that they hired me to be if I'm also doing all of the things. And that really helped me to draw a firm line in the sand and say, okay, this is what I can do to help you, and this is what I am not able to do to help you. And here's why it's a detriment to ask me to do these things that we didn't agree to in the contract, because I'm here to be somebody outside of the business that can point out things that you might not see because you're stuck in it day to day. And every once in a while, of course, they would ask me to jump on extra calls, and we talked about like, what's my policy? And I was like, I thought it was cool that we arrived at no hard and fast rule, that I will say yes to something if it feels good. And if something that they ask me to do feels like resistance or resentful, the answer is no. So I did give them some extra calls. And then I said no to a lot more calls than I said yes to. And overall, I felt like it was a good experience. And we had the one contract. I was a little bit disappointed when it ended because, of course, I was hoping, yeah, this is going to be a long-term contract with, we're all making lots of money. And it was funny when they told me we wouldn't be renewing. I took it hard, of course, but the reason that they told me that they weren't renewing was that I had created such efficient sales systems for them in the 3 months that we worked together that they were like, well, I mean, we fixed it. Thanks.
Unfortunately, you did your job, so we're good now.
Yeah, I know. There's such a thing as an efficient consultant that fixes the problem they were hired for. So I don't know, like I had a couple weeks after that where I was like, damn it, I didn't get the long-term contract that I hoped for. But then we were able to deconstruct, like, did you deliver on these results? Did you deliver value? Are these people like still calling you and going, oh my gosh, this sequence is doing really well? Absolutely. I still have those relationships, even though we're no longer working together. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I don't know, in our industry, everyone's just bragging about the money and all the stuff. And it's like, okay, getting like a 3-month contract where you get the results for the client, or like, what if it went longer because you didn't get the results and then it ends and there's a little bit of like bad blood. It's like, yeah, it's like, you help the people. That's what we're doing here.
I gave them a formula, and that's my whole reason for being, I think, is to make things as simple as possible, to not overcomplicate things like I did for so much of my life, to, dare to let it be easy.
Yeah.
And I built them a system that I was like, look, run this until it breaks. And they have. It's been fantastic for them. And it was a great experience for me, because I was like, that skill that I undervalued, I think. And, because it came so naturally to me to spot this system and this technique and these tactics that I'm recommending, gave them a whole lot in terms of revenue, and sharing it with them gave me a whole lot of confidence.
Yeah.
That's valuable.
And then I know it's been like part of what you're now like packaging for your other consulting offers. And I did make that mistake in the beginning. I should have mentioned more of how you're like a coach for entrepreneurs and businesses. And you've even been doing live events lately, bringing in kick-ass business owners and entrepreneurs that have like good businesses going, helping them find easy ways to ramp up revenue quickly, get more sales coming in with like systems that actually last for a while. And so those live events were another thing. I'm starting to see another pattern here of like how the podcast went from like afraid of not getting guests to all of a sudden you're fully booked. I feel like your live events went from like, hey, I've kind of got this idea, to I'm doing a live event in 2 weeks, very quickly. So you want to talk a bit more about that, how that evolved and happened?
Yeah, that idea came up in Savannah last year. So talk about like taking steps forward and not really knowing where they're going to lead and how things are going to pan out, but just kind of trusting the process, and that life is leading you to where you're going to be. You will get the insights. So I was in Savannah last September, almost a year ago. And a friend came out to visit me, and I stayed in this Airbnb that had this big 2-story front porch and the cushy furniture and the ceiling fans. We spent a lot of time out on that front porch writing. And my friend popped off at the end of that week with, I have accomplished more sitting on this front porch with you over the last 5-6 days than I have in the last 5-6 months at home. And that was like, ooh, idea. So many people talk about my adventures and how they would love to travel with me. And then this person says, we got a lot of work done too. And we had a lot of fun. So I started talking about it, and I got some people that were kind of like, people won't pay to travel with you. You can't get people to buy into adventures. But that idea like hooked its claws into me, and I started obsessing. Can I find something weird to do and like convince my business buddies to go with me to do this really weird thing and have a lot of fun? And then we also get some work done and everybody's happy. So fast forward a few months, and I've been talking about this thing, and even though people are telling me, I don't know that you can make that work, I'm just obsessed. And one day a mutual friend of ours popped off with, you should call it Eat, Play, Launch. And then it just like took on a life of its own. Once I was like, oh my gosh, that's the perfect thing, right? Everybody's been telling me I'm on an eat, pray, love journey with this post-breakup digital nomadism. Like we're just gonna play and eat a lot of good food and launch whatever your product is, and have a good time in the process. So I think from that, he gave me that name in like January of this year. This is how fast all of this happened. I think we were talking in like February about how to make all this happen, and then in like late February, I challenged myself to just do a soft launch to my email list. Who would be interested in this? And I was so scared to send out that email that I immediately sent it and then like went to the movies so that I couldn't check my phone for like, and I did like a double feature at the movies. Like, I'm just going to send this email out and then peace out for several hours so that I can't agonize and be scared of this. And when I came back, it was just like ding, 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 like just a dozen easy from my tiny, tiny list of all these people who wanted to know more about Eat, Play, Launch. They're intrigued by the name. They want to know about the software I'm putting together. And that was invaluable learning too, because I had picked a city that was difficult to get to, Flagstaff, Arizona. It was winter. The timeline was a little bit short for people to be able to get there. And like, I had unintentionally stacked the deck against myself. And I think like previous Angie would have been like, well, that's it. I made all of the mistakes and clearly this was a dumb idea and we need to abandon this. But we were able to talk it through and realize like, okay, 3 weeks out is probably not the ideal time to sell an event. Making sure that they can get to the city fairly easily without having to like rent a car and drive 4 hours. That's probably a good thing too. Or make a bunch of like puddle jumper airplane layovers. And so we decided like pretty much immediately after I was like, okay, this is not happening in Flagstaff. Like there are a lot of people that are interested, but it's not going to happen in Flagstaff. It's just, there's too much too soon. I knew my next stop was going to be Vegas. And we're like, all right, well, cool. If it's not going to be in Flagstaff, 6 weeks to make this happen in Vegas. And like started the planning, brought on a new VA all at the same time, moved to Vegas, did that ridiculous stop at the Four Corners that I felt compelled to do, and got to Vegas and really just started making things happen. And I think the funniest thing about it was that I sold this thing out without advertising to the larger public, without even having a venue or a curriculum or like any of the stuff set in stone. I didn't have a reservation for the thing. I sold them on my passion for, we're going to drive bulldozers and it's going to be amazing for your business. And I promise you'll understand the connection between bulldozers and backhoes in your business. Yes, I did send an email called Ditches and Hose. It was great. And just threw this thing together as fast as I could, learning what I could along the way. It was fantastic.
Yeah. And how I feel like I remember you talking about, wasn't there someone who like kind of took something like from that day and like before the day was even over, like had implemented it and was already like getting results in their business?
I think there were 4 different people out of the 11 that wound up showing up that were like, they took that white space that I built in. Because to me, part of the reason that I started, of course, Eat, Play, Launch, that's a fairly clear objective, but it was also my reaction to, I think, one too many business conferences where your days are jam-packed from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and networking and all this bonus presentation. And just, it's, for the way my brain works, it's way too much. And I wind up not being able to process anything, or even though I've got like dozens of great ideas, I can't implement any of them because it's just too much. And I wanted my event to be like, okay, learn a thing, take some space and go do the thing. Learn a thing, take some space and go do the thing. Oh my gosh, we're going to have great conversations. Oh my gosh, we're going to have great food. And like, could we achieve the same objective as these big business conferences with their jam-packed agendas by deliberately building space around what we're trying to achieve? And I won't say that my first live event was perfect, because really the only way to learn how to do a thing is do a thing, and you're not really going to do it perfect the first time. But I learned so much just putting it out there. And I just actually this morning announced to one of the mastermind groups who had a lot of people that signed up for this and attended, said, I just put the deposit down on the next Eat, Play, Launch event. And one person just said, I'm in. Like, no details, no dates, no, she doesn't even know that I booked a Hobbit village and we're probably going to go Thorbing. Like, I'm just like, Eat, Play, Launch. There may or may not be axe throwing and some other cool things. And she just goes, I'm in. Damn. Okay. keep following the gut, keep tapping into that joy. We're going to figure this thing out.
Yeah. Cool. And yeah, so we're running close on time here, but I just want to go into, so another part of the like building out your own business, a part of that was consulting and creating offers. And you did this really cool thing where you challenge yourself to do, like, I think it was a new offer every week to your list. And that was the thing we had talked about before of like, part of that offer was like you doing coaching and you weren't really like making, like, it was on your website, I think, but you weren't really like promoting it or anything like that. So how's it gone, like with the offers and like just making your coaching more available to people?
Yeah, that was an interesting experiment. And I think that's the thing that I've really learned to be most comfortable with in our time together is just have an idea, treat it like an experiment, see what happens. So on a whim one day, we had talked about how I already have offers. I'm just not really promoting them and being visible about them. So I'm going out of my way to create a lot of great educational content and stay in touch with this small but mighty list I've built, but I'm not really telling them I have things that I can help you with, and would you like to purchase them? That would probably help both of us, and it would be fantastic. And so on a whim one day when I was writing the weekly email that I send out to them, I was like, you know what, I have historically not been great about sharing the offers that I have. And I realized that this is something that I need to get better at. And so I am officially saying I'm going to use you guys as peer pressure, and I'm going to share a new offer every week for a year. I made it approximately 10 weeks, making an offer a week.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And like just the traction that I got was almost immediate with people reaching out and being like, oh, you offer coaching. I did not know that you offer coach. Turns out you have to tell people about the things that you do, Brian. They don't just automatically know it. Should have known this as a marketer, but none of these rules apply to me, of course.
You're on my list. You should know everything about me. Just
I don't have to. I mean, these are things that I help my clients with all the time, but doesn't apply to me. No. Yeah. Had people reach out and be like, okay, could we work together on this? Could I connect you to this person? And, so I've got a couple of coaching students now that I meet with on a weekly basis, kind of like you and I meet on a weekly basis. And it's been really fun to see them grow. And I just had somebody right before we got on our call reach out and be like, so do you do one-on-one coaching? Because I'd really like to talk about what that looks like. I'm like, oh, wow. It's coming to me now because I put it out there. And so even though I didn't hit my target of an offer a week for an entire year, I stopped that early, but it's having lasting results and it's changing how I speak about myself out in the world. I'm not afraid to sell and that like people will reject me anymore. Yeah. And the funniest part I think is, I know that we're running up on time, but it led to me finding my new business partner because we had an accountability call every week for the better part of 10 months. And I think I was talking about want to do more consulting offers, know that I could do big money for these big companies. And I still really struggle putting together a sales call. Like the idea of a sales call intimidates me, even though I know I can do the work and deliver the goods. And she was like, I could sell things all day, every day, love cold calling, closing 5-figure, like I could do that. Because where I struggle is holding boundaries and not letting the clients add more to my plates. And I was like, hold up. You remember that consulting story that we just talked about where I'm like, my perspective is from being outside of your business. We're not going to take extra calls and do extra work. I know how to hold boundaries like a boss and still deliver values to the client. Oh my gosh, wait, what? Did you hear what I just heard? You were really great.
Oh, we liked.
I know, like you're really great at the thing that I struggle with. And that is in fact your like happy place. Go play in that. Cool. And so we've just been pedal to the metal ever since we had that first discussion about, okay, if we go into business together, the main thing to me is that we have our friendship. I don't care what happens with the business as long as we're friends at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now that we're aligned on that, could we create a $15,000 coaching program? I think we can. And we've got 3 tentative yeses.
Woo! Hey-o, hell yeah.
In less than a month. And again, we don't even have a place where we're going to host this course. We've got the curriculum outlined, but not built. We're building this plane as we're flying it, and we're both excited to do this.
Nice. We'll love it. I didn't even know about that part. That's news to me. This is
it's brand new. It's so new.
Cool. Sweet. So also just want to touch on before we go, you had mentioned before we started recording, like a ripple effect. Like how are you able to take what we're doing in our coaching, and that how is that helping you in your coaching
Oh
for
my.
the business owners and the freelancers that you're helping?
You know, with the weird thing about the universe is I think that there's like cycles and patterns that we can't even really perceive. And it's funny to me how often like something that comes up in my call with you subsequently comes up with everybody that I wind up coaching over the course of the next couple of weeks, or even a client will tell me, oh my gosh, I'm really struggling with this. And it's like, is this like a, you know, hidden signal from the universe that like everybody's going to freak out about this particular thing at this particular time and go? But like, we'll talk about something, we'll come up with a solution, we'll work out, or you'll remind me about one of the tools like the 4A's or acknowledgements, which is still my favorite thing. And I will wind up on a coaching call where somebody is struggling like I was struggling. And I go, you know what really helps me? My coach, Brian, taught me this amazing tool called acknowledgements. And here's how I understand it to work. Here's how you could basically celebrate and acknowledge yourself for all of the things that you have done, even if you didn't meet all of your goals. And like, hey, maybe stop beating yourself up for failing to hit your goals without also acknowledging that you've actually done a hell of a lot of work and gotten a lot farther than you thought you did. Let's paint a more realistic picture of you and celebrate the wins as often as we beat ourselves up for the losses. So I just think of like every once in a while I get overwhelmed by the enormity of that, right? We kind of get this internalized message that to have an impact on the world, you have to be somebody mega ultra, you got to be Mother Teresa, you got to be Elon Musk, you got to do big, you got to be out there, everybody knows your name. But man, the magnitude of you and I working on one-on-one, and me working with 5-10 different people one-on-one, and maybe half of those people go out and share acknowledgements with somebody that they work on, and like exponential growth from just 2 people talking and the right idea at the right time. That just, I mean, I'm a writer and I don't really have words to describe kind of that magic. That's what it is. It's magic. Right idea, right time, right people, change the world.
Heck yeah, I love it. Cool. Is there anything else you want to share about your journey or what it's been like to work together or anything like that before we go?
I'm just overjoyed to be in a place where I feel like everything about me is great.
Yeah.
It's, you know, I'm human and I'm allowed to be. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to work with people that I don't want to. I don't have to take on projects that don't bring me joy. Like with my business partner, I can go, oh, hey, I hate this part. You're really great at that part and you love doing it. Will you do that? And I'll do that. Okay, cool. Let's play in our happy places and just make this a lot of fun. So yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that we really connect too, is that we both have that same overarching mission of freedom, joy, hooky for theme park Thursdays, and not being beholden to a business for the rest of our lives and missing out on all of the important moments.
Absolutely. I love that. Cool. All right. Well, thank you. Great job in how far you've come and all the work you've been putting in, and looking forward to see how much ass you continue to kick in the coming months.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Couldn't have done it without you.
All right. You bet. Bye, Angie.